Be yourself, be positive. Just another mindset.
Hello, friends, and welcome to a new episode of the Just Another Mindset podcast, the show that inspires you to change and live a more exciting life. My name is Ismael, and each week I bring to you a relevant conversation, message, or topic that will not only entertain you, but help you to change towards a more meaningful and satisfying life, individually and collectively. Let us get inspired and embrace collective changes for the better. In today's solo episode, I will talk about my very personal 12-hour walk, what that concept even is, and I will answer all the questions that I got from you guys after completing my walk roughly 10 days ago. And I hope that you take value from it as much as I did. I really find it a very inspiring and potentially life-changing experience. So I really want to share that with you today. And having said that, if you in fact enjoy this episode and learn from it, I have the very personal request that today, if you have not done already, you make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel of the Just Another Mindset. And I wish you a lot of fun watching my personal solo episode in video today. And if you choose to listen via audio, I would still invite you to make sure and support the podcast by subscribing to the YouTube channel. And with that, I hope that you take some value from this episode. And as always, please let me know what resonates most with you. In this case, what your personal experience with longer walks is, and also if you agree or if you disagree somewhere. And with that, welcome to today's solo episode. It's actually been some time that I had a solo episode, and I hope you will stick with me and only me today. And I want to talk about the 12-hour walk that I have completed roughly 10 days ago from now. And I wanted to share with you what were my ideas before going on the walk and how did I use this day to reflect, to think, and maybe also not to think. And that said, why should you even care to listen to today's episode? Well, first of all, I believe that this 12-hour walk certainly has the ability to change one's life. It's also likely that even though some people have used more time to reflect on themselves, that it's been some time that you reflected on yourself and that you've been with yourself. And this 12-hour walk concept really invites you to question and to rethink. And hence, maybe this is a good reminder for you to take a breath and reconsider a few things or come up with conclusions that everything is working all right the way it is. And last but not least, you will hear about my very personal experience going for this 12-hour walk. So where did I go? What thoughts crossed my mind? And I will try to use the questions that I got from you guys after finishing the 12-hour walk, and hopefully I can answer quite a few of them. And if you in fact are not aware that I went for this walk, please anyways feel free to reach out, ask questions, and let me know if the concept of the 12-hour walk resonates with you as well. So what are the three main takeaways of today's episode? The first one is that I really invite you to be for a full day all by yourself, walking, thinking, and really not having anything else on your schedule but yourself. The second one would be that walking for 12 hours can almost feel like a full lifetime, and I will detail that statement a little bit later throughout the episode. And the third one is that funny and serious and stupid thoughts will come up during those 12 hours when you're all by yourself walking, and all of them are appreciated and all of them can be acknowledged. And with that, I hope you have fun with me in today's solo episode on the 12-hour walk that, in fact, you guys requested to hear a little bit more about. And let's start with the concept of the 12-hour walk and why I even decided to go for such a journey. And before we do that, I want to credit Colin O'Brady, who's a great adventurer, and he came up with the idea of the 12-hour walk. Or rather, he put it onto paper and he made it a big international, global, you may say, movement. And about that movement, I heard on the Modern Wisdom podcast by Chris Williamson, whom I also want to credit. There's a lot of good content there. And I believe that at earlier stages, and I believe that at an earlier interview, I actually credited Tim Ferriss for having Colin O'Brady on the show. And while preparing, I must be mistaken because it was Chris Williamson. Chris, Tim, I hope you guys excuse me if you're listening to that. And all three of you do tremendous and great things. But for today's episodes, it's really Colin O'Brady and his concept of the 12-hour walk. You already know how I got to know about it. I listened to a podcast episode that I will, of course, link to the speaker notes today. And before we look at what the 12-hour walk concept by Colin O'Brady is, I have a few remarks to make. And the first one is that Colin also wrote a book about his very personal 12-hour walk journey, what it changed in his life, and why it's such an impactful concept. And having heard of the 12-hour walk concept in this very podcast that I was describing earlier, and having scheduled a reflection weekend, which is something that I tend to do at least once a quarter, and I try to really take time for myself. A day, maybe even 2 days. And it actually happened also to be full weeks, but lately it's been a day or two. And I had that planned, and I didn't really have all the time between listening to this podcast episode and going for my reflection weekend. And hence, I did not read the book 12-Hour Walk before going for my very personal journey. I did that because it resonated with me a lot, and I did that because I really wanted to figure out the concept, even though I did not have the time to read the book before. But I would encourage each and every one of you, if you want to have the full experience, and if you have not done such reflection weekends or reflection days yourself before, it's definitely worth reading Colin's book before going on that journey and not after. And with that, I actually want to read a paragraph from Colin himself, because I believe he can best describe what the 12-hour walk is all about. So bear with me. The idea for the 12-hour walk came to me in 2020 during COVID lockdown, at a point when I'd lost purpose and direction. I thought back to my 2018 solo trek across Antarctica, where I walked 12 hours each day for 54 days straight to complete the crossing. Despite the harshness of the landscape and extreme solitude, I experienced many moments of deep flow, clarity, and fulfillment. During lockdown, I was eager to rediscover that inner strength. On a whim, I decided to go on a long walk near my family's house in the Oregon coast. I put my phone on airplane mode and set out with no specific destination in mind. And he described that also in the Modern Wisdom podcast. And that 12-hour journey, that 12-hour walk without any distractions and without any destination really resonated with me a lot. Again, I have done similar reflections before, and I had also great moments when just wandering around without any particular destination. In fact, it's something that Paul Millard and myself also talked about in an earlier podcast episode. And I believe it's something that each and every one of us should do more often, because it really gets us to places we don't know. It gets us into thought processes we haven't undergone so far. And it really makes us feel more alive and enjoy nature or our environment. So that's something, that I can really recommend. And that's something that really resonated with me, I must say. And I have a few more words of Colin, in fact, how he describes the 12-hour walk. 12 hours later, I came home a different person than when I had left. Being unplugged and untethered gave me the space to examine my limiting beliefs and reorient to living my best life. Shifting my mindset was the key. The lesson? You don't have to walk 932 miles across Antarctica to experience the transformative power of spending a single day with yourself, walking alone in silence. The 12-hour walk is for everyone. Since the coastal walk, I, being Colin O'Brady, wrote the 12-hour walk, and I've shared the life-changing experience of the walk with people all over the world. People of all ages, fitness levels, abilities, and circumstances. The one thing they all have in common is that they arrive at the finish line in a much better place than when they started. And I can only agree to that. And this is also one of the reasons why I want to share this beautiful concept with all of you guys. I think it doesn't matter where you start. It doesn't really matter which intention you take. But regardless the circumstances, you will come back after 12 hours feeling better, feeling more alive, and having learned something. So I really encourage each and every one of you to go for the 12-hour walk, and also let Colin and myself know how you feel about it. So in preparation for the 12-hour walk, what's there to do? First, you should commit to a date. Put the date in your calendar, and even more, put the date into the ear of a friend or a family member. Find a date and communicate it to an accountability partner. In fact, there was the global 12-hour walk day on the 10th of September, which I knew I'm gonna miss because I was still on vacation and we had plans for that very day. So what I did the day I listened to the podcast was I sent Colin himself a message, and I told him that I want to commit doing the walk by myself, but that I will not be able to do it on the 10th, but that I'm committing to let him know as soon as I can find a possible date. And I believe another week or so passed, and I knew I can use the 14th of September. And I sent him a message again. He was super responsive and encouraging, asking me to share my experience after the walk with him. And of course, I have done so in a short text message already. And here you are, Colin, for the full-blown experience of my 12-hour walk. So again, find a person, a family member, a friend, and find a date that you can commit to, and then don't move it around, but stick to your plan. And that said, I invite you to send me a message today when you listen to that very podcast, and let me know what date you will be going for the 12-hour walk. If I should be your accountability, I'm more than happy to support you, and I'm more than happy to answer all your questions you have before going on that journey in person. So reach out. The second step is to, on the day of your walk, or even a day before, record a short snippet with your intention. So why are you going on that very walk? Is there a certain area in your life that you want to think about? Is there a certain person, a certain relationship? I think there can be so many different intentions, and you can of course record that on a phone like I do right now, or on a camera, or you can also just write it down. I think what's important is that you understand yourself of why are you going on this journey today. The third step, and I know that it might sound frightening, but I can tell you it's not, is to unplug. Unplug yourself from your phone, unplug yourself from your social media, and unplug yourself from your natural environment. Use this day really for yourself. You're all by yourself, there's nothing to fear, and you will, of course, make your way back. Take this one very day to not be responsive to anyone else but yourself and your own thoughts. And then we can already go for step 4, which is go for the walk. Go for a walk without any particular destination. Go for a walk without any distractions. No music, no books, no nothing around. Just you, yourself, nature, the city if you choose to do it there, or whatever is around. Don't have a destination that you want to reach. Don't have a particular amount of kilometers you want to reach or miles. Just follow your instinct, follow your gut, and take turns that you haven't taken before. Don't go the pathways that you have gone over and over again. The chances anyways are good that within 12 hours you will run out of pathways that you have gone over and over again. But I really encourage you to, from the very beginning, if it feels right, take the other way. If you usually take a left, take a right today and have fun. What's also important to say is please do take rest wherever you need it. Please do make sure to take some food and some water or some other liquid with yourself that you like to drink during the 12-hour walk, and take rest whenever you need it. If your knees, your legs, or your lower back tell you to stop, please do so. There is nothing to chase, there is no need to rush, and there is only one person to take care of today, and that's yourself. And once you've combined 4 walking and 5 resting for some time, 12 hours will pass in no time, I can tell you, it did for me. And afterwards, I invite you for step number 6, and that is to reflect. So after you come back, gather your thoughts, write down a few things that come to mind. And you can of course do that after the walk, but what I, for example, also did, I took a small little notebook for myself and 2 pens, because I just wanted to make sure that I have one, even if one breaks. And whichever thoughts and whichever observations I had, I noted them down in my notebook. And after the walk, again, I wrote down my very present thoughts and my very present inspirations. And I invite you to do the same. And I also invite you to share them with me and with the Just Another Mindset community. So if you go for the walk and you completed your walk, please feel free to share your reflections with this community and also with Colin and myself. And that already leads me to a few questions on my very personal experience of the 12-hour walk. The first one being, why did you choose this particular day? Well, as I stated a bit earlier, I heard about the 10th of September being the global 12-hour walk day, and I was sure not to make it. But I wanted to do it as soon as possible, and I also had this weekend planned where I reflect on myself. And in fact, the weekend became a Thursday, and the Thursday happened to be the 14th of September. And that is the very reason why I chose this date. I communicated it to my accountability partner, to Colin, and also to a few friends of mine. And here we go. That was the reason for the 14th of September. Even though I don't really have one home environment, but I was somewhere else and I didn't mind because I wanted to experience a new environment, places I hadn't seen before. And I guess I was just really lucky that the weather was still all right, I want to call it. There was a few breaks, 2 or 3, in fact, due to rain, heavier rain, but most of the time I was able to walk in the sun and without rain and with proper conditions. So I also encourage you, if you choose your day, do your research on what could happen regarding the weather on that one day and make sure to bring appropriate clothing because you don't want to walk with super wet feet or without a rain jacket in case it's raining too much. The second question would be, where did you walk? And I was lucky enough to go for most parts of my 12-hour walk along the Baltic Sea. I started in Gdansk and I finished in Rewa, and probably my pronunciation is horrible, and I hope all my Polish friends can excuse that, but I figured out, and I in fact figured that out the day when I prepared for this very podcast episode, that this was roughly 50 kilometers. And for me, that was the first big learning of the day. I started recording my walk with Strava, which is an app that I use to record my walks and certain cycle trips. And I figured it would be nice for myself to know where exactly I walked, but I believe it didn't take me much longer than 10 minutes or so to decide that I really do not need to have a record of where I walked today. It doesn't make any difference at all. So I decided myself, even though it would have been neat, I don't need this record. I don't need this activity on my Strava, knowing how far and how fast I walked, but I really just wanted to be by myself. So there you go for my very first learning. And I would encourage all of you, if you think the same, that maybe it's worth going for a walk without recording it and just figuring out where you walked by yourself later. And that being said, the walk along the Baltic Sea, or from Gdansk to Rewa, had stretches that were really beautiful. So it's a white beach with cold water, there is few seagulls, there is very few people, and the weather was amazing. And on the other hand, there was also stretches that were really not as beautiful. I had to pass a huge harbor and an industrial zone, and I in fact did not know when or if or whether I would get back to the beach. I eventually did, but that is what I meant earlier. While I was on my walk, the first few hours were super easy, super smooth. I didn't think about much, which was surprising, but nice for myself. I will talk about that in a bit more detail later. But anyways, the first few hours were very comforting, and then there were 4 to 5 hours which were really not big fun. And for me, that was really a depiction of life. We all have easy times, we all have good times, and we also, all of us, have not so nice times, and we all experience moments, events, and people that we do not like and that we need to go through. But in the end, just be reminded that pushing through those moments and going through the hard times will always end up in experiencing good times again. So that was another big lesson I took from the 12-hour walk, and that is, I believe, one of the biggest lessons I have, or one of the biggest advice I have. If you would have asked me after 6 hours how I liked this idea of the 12-hour walk, I would have told you a very different story than the one that I'm telling you today. But I pushed through, I was open to experience and also acknowledge and appreciate the not so beautiful parts of my walk. And after the full 12 hours, after the full lifetime, if you want to say, I'm very happy that I did so. And I'm very happy that those not so nice, not so pretty faces of this very walk were part of it. So I really encourage all of you, don't take a shortcut and go for 4 hours where you know it's only beautiful, but really go for the 12 hours. If you choose to do it in a national park, if you choose to do it only at the beach, or if you choose to do it somewhere where it's only beautiful, so it be. Perfectly fine, but for me, very personally, it was a good learning that the path I walked had beautiful and really not so beautiful faces, and that much on where I walked. Another question I got quite frequently is whether or not the 12-hour walk was physically challenging. Well, again, I think this 12-hour walk is such a beauty of a concept because it requires zero money, zero investment. You can basically go with what you have tomorrow. And it also does require zero preparation. Obviously, walking for 12 hours can seem to be a long distance, but if you make sure to rest, if you make sure to drink, and if you make sure to go at your own pace, there is really nothing to worry about. Just go at your own pace, walk the direction that you feel like walking, and there should be nothing to worry about. Having said that, after the 12 hours walk, I actually expected to feel my knees and my lower back, but it didn't show up the next day. So lucky me, I guess I walked at a good pace. But what I can state is that I still have 2 toenails that feel the walk, and by now you can even see it, but I guess that is just a signal to get better or new shoes. I have been using those running shoes as my only pair of shoes for 1.5 years now. So I guess it's a signal that they are somewhat too small, too tight, and that I should get rid of them. Another question I got a few times, and I just now realized that I have answered it already, is who was your accountability partner? Again, Colin was my accountability partner because I sent him a message the very day I listened to the podcast episode, and I encourage you to do the same with me or also with him, whomever you choose to be your accountability partner for your very own 12-hour walk. And the rest is history, as they say, or the rest is actually the present podcast episode, as in my reflection. Another, and now it gets a little bit more interesting for myself, question that interests you guys is, what did I think about? Well, I already stated that for the first 3 hours, surprisingly, I didn't think about anything. It was almost a meditative state in which I was walking all the way, for those who are familiar, from Gdansk until Sopot, until I went into a forest. And it was a surprise, but I appreciated and accepted that surprise. And I really enjoyed walking in bliss without thinking too much, without starting to solve the questions that I indeed had in my head, and without dwelling on this intention that I brought on my 12-hour walk. So for the first 3 or so hours, I'm not quite sure, I didn't really think about much, but I really focused on enjoying my environment, stopping here and there to watch a seagull, to watch a wave, to look at the sand, to listen to the wind, and to just get used to walking without any distractions. This is something I've done multiple times, and I will talk about what this 12-hour walk reminded me of in a bit, but it really was a great experience, just experiencing without many thoughts in my head. For the rest, I took a notebook, and I want to share some personal notes that I took for myself in order to recap what I thought about. And I basically clustered, not before but after the walk, all my thoughts into 5 different categories. The first category I now call my path, and there's a few questions that came to my mind, and I want to read some of them. Where do I want and need to put my focus? Where is my time best spent? And finding a path after a long search feels amazing. The second category I called after my walk is relationship. And there is few questions such as, how much of the same do we seek in life? How does our life look like going forward? And how do we make this happen? So a second category next to my very own path is the path of Justina and myself and my relationship to her. Thirdly, I created a category which I would just call observations. And even though I'm a fairly optimistic person, or people usually tend to say so, I noted down the following. The first one, people are sad. people are scared and there are very few smiles on the street, sadly. Also, I noted down life is better at the sea. I think all of us have heard that before. And I wrote down to myself that I should avoid big cities and noise. And I think this is something that the past 2 years have really confirmed for me. I've always liked nature, but for a certain period over the past 10 years, I didn't really enjoy nature as much. And I think that was just a realization that this should not happen again. The fourth category, which I today call, is random stuff. And my first question, and maybe you guys can even answer that, is what the hell is Arca? The second note I took is Taverna Dari Morza. It's a nice village because I had no idea where I was, but I passed this beautiful, picturesque village, and in order to take note where I am and to figure out where this was and if I want to come back, I noted down a place I really liked, and I can actually check where this taverna is located in Google Maps today, I suppose. And another note I took is the name, I suppose, Energetikov, which I just find a hilarious and strong name for all sorts of things. I could imagine opening a club called that. I could imagine even opening a restaurant called that. I could imagine having an online course called Energetikov, and I just think the name itself can be used for so many different things, and I'm sure I'm gonna release something with it one day. And the fifth and final category for my very personal walk is activities to pursue, and I have a few bullets there again, and one of which would be writing, another one is data, a third one is think tank, and a fourth one is water sports. So let's see what I do with all those activities and when and where and how I actually pursue them. And again, I think for myself, there were those 5 categories of thoughts, I just want to call it, or 5 categories of notes that I took. But if you have 3 or 7 or 23 or 100, that's more than fine. Again, it's something super individualistic. I really do like taking a notebook. You can also do that differently, though I really encourage to not use a phone in order to take notes, but use pen and paper or use a voice recording machine that you can take where you record something every once in a while. I'm sure there's different ways, and what's most important is your journey is the right journey, and your categories and your thoughts are the right thoughts. There is no wrong, and there is no doing things that are not meant to be done. Always keep that in mind, and feel free to share your thoughts. Another question I got a few times, and in parts I already answered it, is it really necessary to go for 12 hours? And again, for me, it is a really good time frame. I think it certainly does make sense to not cut it into smaller pieces, but to really take a full day off for yourself and just walk. You don't have a certain pace that you need to make. You don't have a certain distance that you need to reach. It's really all about feeling comfortable and walking. And the only caveat that I might have is, depending on your time zone, just start walking whenever the sun is coming up and be done whenever the sun is coming down. And I know that this could mean you go for rather 10 hours instead of 12, or you go for rather 14 hours, depending on wherever on this very planet you are. But I really appreciate having gone for the full 12 hours. And I believe I checked the time also only 3 times while being on that walk. Once after 3 hours, once after 6 hours, both for food breaks. The first one was a breakfast, the second was a lunch, and once, in fact, 15 minutes before the 12 hours were completed. So I put the phone away and then just knew I'm gonna walk a little further. And there we go. I was with my 12 hours. So I really do encourage you, go for 12 hours, not for 6, not for 4. But if there is particular reasons that you cannot, that you are physically or mentally not able to do so, of course, choose your very length of a walk and go with that. Another question I got a few times is this walk for me? Well, to be honest, you are the only one to answer that question. And I suppose you can only answer that question once you went for your 12-hour walk. So the only thing I can do is to invite each and every of you guys to go for this 12-hour walk, to find out and to experience a full day without any distractions, only with yourself. And I believe in the end, nothing bad can really happen, can it? Was it a life-changing walk? Well, to be honest, I can say it was not. And why is it that I can say that so certain? Well, as I stated before, I do reflection. I do such activities fairly often. So I really can imagine that this 12-hour walk can be life-changing for so many people out there, and maybe including you listening. If you have not done such activities, if you have not done such reflection times yet in your life, I'm actually quite certain it will change your life. So again, please figure and find out yourself. It was nevertheless a great reminder of life-changing events in my life. And again, I think it's a very easy, no cost, no preparation way to get into such state. So in regard to being alone, it reminded me quite a bit of taking the Trans-Siberian Express from St. Petersburg all the way to Mongolia. And needless to say, this train was on the tracks for much longer than 12 hours. So it definitely was a great tool to get into that being alone state and thinking state. It was also a reminder in regard to wandering around for hours. And it actually reminded me of one particular day in Tokyo a few years back, where a friend of mine and myself were walking around without any particular destination for 12, 14, I'm not quite sure, hours, for a lot of kilometers as well. And again, I didn't have to go to Tokyo for this very experience, but I could do it wherever I was on the 14th of September, meaning in my case, the north of Poland, meaning in your case, it can be wherever you are located today or in a week from now. And it also reminded me of traveling without destination in Taiwan just before lockdown. And I had rented a cycle there. I was on a solo trip and I didn't quite know where I was heading. I didn't quite know how far I want to go. And I did that for a couple of days before finding a small house at the beach, at the coast, that I knew I was searching without being aware of such. But that's a different story, and I believe I touched on that in an earlier podcast episode. And if you still have any questions regarding those life-changing travels of myself, then please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to respond in person, and I'm also happy to record something in more detail, if that helps either of you guys. And the final question, would you go again? Well, I believe if you listened all the way until here, you got an idea of whether or not I would go. And I would answer that with a definite yes. I would definitely go for 12 hours again. I will, in fact, go for 12-hour walks again. I'm not quite sure. This is end of September that I'm recording. If I will do it again this year or if I might reserve that for the next year coming. But I will definitely use that concept of the 12-hour walk for myself and incorporate that into my reflection routines. Again, it's a non-cost, non-preparation way to really spend a day with yourself and to reflect on yourself. And it also reminded me a lot of a quote, and I'm paraphrasing here, of Jeremy Sutton, who was also a guest on the podcast earlier and who runs ultra marathons. And he talked to me and said when he does his 100-kilometer runs, this is really a depiction of his lifetime. There's going to be ups, there's going to be downs, there's going to be positive emotion, and there is going to be a hell lot of negative emotions as well. But this is the beauty of going for a long run. And for me, this is also the beauty of going for a walk and the beauty of living a life. And the beauty of living a life with changes. And with that, I hope that you can take something away from today's episode. I hope to hear from you whether or not you like the concept of the 12-hour walk for yourself. And I'm already excited hearing from you guys when you are planning to go for your very own walk. And that said, I have a few questions and I'm looking forward hearing from all of you. Did you ever go for such a 12-hour walk? If so, what is your experience with it? Did you read Colin's book, The 12-Hour Walk, or listen to the audiobook? If so, what do you think about it? When was the last time that you took a full day off only for yourself and did something that you care about? Whom of your friends or family members are you planning to share this concept of the 12-hour walk with? And you're more than welcome to share Colin's book. And of course, you're more than welcome to share this very podcast episode with all your friends and all the family members that you think the concept of the 12-hour walk could resonate with. And lastly, when will you go for your own 12-hour walk? Again, feel free to use me as your accountability partner. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions beforehand your walk. And feel free to let me and to let the whole community know how it went for yourself and reflect on things. Happy walking! Hello, my friend, and thanks for sticking until the very end of that podcast episode on my personal experience of the 12-hour walk. And I just want to share a quick reminder with you that you can support the Just Another Mindset podcast by subscribing to the YouTube channel. And also, if you enjoy this podcast and learn from it, please share this episode with a friend or two and your accountability partner, of course, and subscribe to the Just Another Mindset podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcast. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please use, in fact, the next 10 seconds to give the Just Another Mindset podcast a rating, and know that you will help me to create more meaningful content like this, and also that it will help other people to find this content and get inspired as well. Also, if there is any future topic or guest that you would like to hear more about on Just Another Mindset, please let me know by leaving a comment on YouTube or sending a direct mail. And if nobody told you lately, be reminded that you are worthy, you matter, and you can achieve anything.